This is the Functionised podcast. May you be a better version of yourself each day. Live Functionised.
Thank you, Christian. Like I said, it gives me tingles every time you hear that. Angelo Gingerelli, the strength and conditioning coach at Seton Hall University and adjunct professor. How's it going?
I'm good, man. How you doing, Jim?
I'm amazing. Thank you so much for joining us. Nobody can see or know, but Angelo got to spend a little time at the Fit Lab before we came over here to a shared universe. And just curious, Angelo, your background, strength conditioning, working with high-level athletes, and then seeing the Fit Lab, which has got to be a total change and difference from the weight room. What were your initial thoughts and impression?
That's the best. My first impression was this is different. This is not, there's a million, where we are in Monmouth County, New Jersey, there's a million personal training studios, a million gyms, a million facilities, right? And I think a lot of them are doing great things. I don't think there's many like yours. When I walked in, I felt I was someplace different. You had clients, you're busy on a Friday, which means you're doing something right. Those people are already on their way down the beach, right? They're already trying to get better and work out with you guys, which I think is great. And you and your staff took a really good amount of time with me and explained to me the equipment, and you're doing some stuff that I don't know a lot about. I think part of that is in the college strength and conditioning world, there's not a lot of thinking outside the box, right? There's a box that if USF has X equipment, the next time you redo your weight room, you might want to look at the same equipment, right? You want to it's an arms race to build the biggest, baddest weight room you possibly can. And whether or not you really need that weight room to train athletes is a very gray area, in my opinion, right?
Of course.
So I think you guys are doing some stuff that's different and I think really cool, and I definitely want to know more about it. And I've been interested in what you guys are doing since I stumbled upon your Instagram account probably a month or so ago. And today I got to really see it firsthand, and I'm happy to be a part of it and see it for the day.
Isn't it crazy how you just kind of stumble upon things? I mean, when you're searching around the web and some of the best stuff, we have no idea what's out there. Yeah,
I always say as a strength and conditioning coach, the internet is the best and the worst thing, right? Because the best thing is guys like us can meet each other, and we're right down the road, and we end up on a podcast together, and we're sharing ideas, and hopefully we're both smarter when it's over. That's a great thing that's impossible without the internet, right?
Absolutely.
But then you get the other side of it is like I don't think you do as many young kids, but I'll deal with a youth athlete, or my daughter's 5, and one of her friends will be, they're playing youth soccer together, and the kid's father come up to being like, well, I just downloaded the Giants workout program. I want to put my 5-year-old on it. No, you absolutely should not do that, right?
Not a good idea.
Or my 13-year-old son plays baseball. He's going to lift weights just like Aaron Judge. No, Aaron Judge is a grown man and a freak athlete. Like that's not the way everybody should train. So I feel like the internet, for if you're smart and you have a background and you can decipher the good from the bad, is like the greatest thing ever. But if you don't have that discerning palate, there's a lot of bad stuff out there. And you don't know how to shift through it. You can end up in a bad place sometimes.
Oh my goodness, yes. So Angelo, how did you get here? I mean, not just at a shared university.
I took Route 36.
Your resume is quite impressive. It's probably you've had a tough time condensing it at times.
I appreciate that. So I give you my thumbnail bio as a strength coach. I was born in Toms River, New Jersey. I am way more proud of that than I probably should be, but I love Toms River, New Jersey. I went to Toms River High School East in the 90s, and at the time, we were one of the few public high schools that had a strength and conditioning coach. I'm going to shout him out right now. His name's Ron DeVito, probably one of the biggest influences in my life outside of my parents. He ran the Raider Power plant, made some of my best friends there. We're still friends today. Our kids play together, and 25 years later. And we had a powerlifting team. I got into that. And just that weight room was such a big part of my high school athletic experience. I ended up liking the weight room more than I liked the sports I was competing in. And I just decided that that's something I wanted to get into. And, exercise physiology and strength and conditioning was kind of just starting to be a major in the mid-90s. And University of Delaware offered that. I went ahead and did that from 96, graduated in 99. Had a great experience there, was a grad assistant at Virginia Tech for 99 and 2000. And just the way the stars aligned, I was there the same 2 years Michael Vick was a quarterback. So I got to be a part of 2 really cool football experiences there for the 2 years he was playing before he became an Atlanta Falcon. And then from there, a couple years at NC State, 1 year with the Pittsburgh Pirates, and then I've been at Seton Hall since 2005, which is an eternity in strength and conditioning years. Most people don't keep college jobs 15 years. They either, their teams don't do well and they're told to move on, or they come to their senses and get out of it, kind of like you did. But I'm in a weird spot, man. I grew up a Seton Hall fan. When I was a kid running around Tundra, I had a Seton Hall starter jacket. I was always a Pirates fan, and when that job opened, I chose to leave professional baseball because my attitude was, How often do you get a chance to work at a place you rooted for your whole life, and it's within an hour where you grew up?
Right.
So, in my opinion, New York City, I'm the biggest Jersey Shore advocate there is, but I got a chance to get back to Jersey and be around New York and live that, that lifestyle for a while. And I'm just like, I want to do that. So I did that in 2005, and it's been a good experience ever since.
So a lot of people joke around that, how you doing today? Oh, living the dream. And they don't mean it. Sounds like you actually are living the dream.
It's weird, man. If you asked me what at 16 years old when I had that starter jacket, what do you want to be doing when you're an adult? It'd be pretty close to this. And that's not and that's as much, it's work ethic, and I made some good decisions, but a lot of it's luck, right? Like in college strength and conditioning, if jobs don't open up, like if, say, for example, the guy before me stayed at that job for 20 years, I wouldn't have been given that opportunity. Right. So I think like most people in our profession, it's a little bit of luck, being in the right place at the right time, right connections is I always tell, I do a lot with interns in my job. I always tell them, relationships are very important. Keep in touch with as many people as you can. And then, so when you get that opportunity, you can put your ducks in a row and take advantage of it, it's hard, man. College strength and conditioning isn't the best paid profession. It's not super glamorous, but if you apply for a job, there's 200-300 applicants for every position. It might be part-time, no benefits, and you get 300 applications in. So it's extremely competitive, even though the compensation is not great. So I think definitely tell young coaches or people that think they might want to get in this, just maintain relationships, keep in touch with people, and be able to call the right people for references when you need it, because that really goes a long way.
Let me ask you, that was a good point there. Say there's a kid decides that one day he wants to be a strength and conditioning coach at some high elite level. Where does he start? What does he do? What would you tell him?
The biggest thing I always tell interns when I bring them in every semester is the first thing is establish a good academic background of what you're doing. Understand how the body works. Understand at the very least basic anatomy and physiology, and be able to speak the language of the sports medicine people you deal with, the chiropractors, the sport coaches, and be able to explain we're doing A because of B, right? Be able to speak the language at an academic level to some extent. Two, work on relationships with people. I think the biggest thing is, I deal with a lot of people that are very, I hate to use this term, but book smart, right? They're academic smart and can write a paper on why you should train a certain way, but can't convince a client or an athlete to train that way, right? Right. And the biggest thing you see in the last 10 years in our profession with that is CrossFit, right? We can argue all day that CrossFit's not the optimal way to train, and there's a million problems with it, right? But the one thing is they sell community. They sell the idea that when you buy a membership, you're part of the club, and you get to be, and everybody's having a blast. And you can't out explain that to the people that are in it, because they're having a blast, right? And they're working out, and I think it's like any other program. There's good and bad parts of it, but I think they've just mastered the idea of selling you. We're the coolest kids in the room, and for the right price, you can be a part of this, right? If you work hard and pay your dues, you can be a part of it. And I think the third thing would be you learn from everybody you can, because I think we work in a profession where me and you probably been in the game about the same amount of time. I don't think either one of us necessarily knows more than the other person, but we definitely know different things than the other person, right? Fair enough. So I think try to learn from everybody and don't be open to different things, right? So for example, if you grew up in a powerlifting environment, all you did was squat, bench, and deadlift, that's great. That's a good foundation of how to lift weights, right? But don't think you are never going to get anything out of the Olympic lifts or strongman stuff or some ideas from bodybuilding, because I think all that's great. And depending on what clientele you end up with, you might end up using more from that stuff and not than the stuff you thought you would. So I just think learn from as many people as you can. And, the internet's great for that. Instagram is great for that. The amount of books there's so many people to learn from now. Just get out there and learn as much as you can and pick and choose and then develop your own philosophy.
Absolutely. We were talking about CrossFit there, and I think maybe part of what you're getting to is how so many individuals who are untrained get hurt. Yeah,
what I always tell the college athletes I deal with, right? If you played 4 years of college athletics and had a good strength and conditioning coach, and you can squat and you can lunge and you can push and pull and you move pretty well and you don't have pre-existing injuries, CrossFit might be cool for you, right? You have a good foundation of training. The problem I think arises when the college kid's grandmother shows up at the CrossFit box and wants to start jumping on boxes and flipping tires and stuff. So I think CrossFit's good if you got a good foundation of training and you can do the basic movements well, and you're kind of bored with that and want to try something new. I don't think it should be your first day in a gym. It shouldn't be, or after a 10-year layoff from working out. Right. I don't think the WOD of the day is the way to go until you develop some kind of base fitness and base strength.
Oh, it definitely seems. I mean, CrossFit is a total body. It's a total athletic event. I mean, it really is. I mean, that's where the games are derived. Can we find the fittest of all athletes there? If you actually were looking for the fittest of all athletes, the creme de la creme, you are just like the most well-rounded. Do you think CrossFit is the sport?
I think it's pretty close. I think it's I don't know any other world where you find a guy or a girl that is that strong, in that good of physical condition, with that much aerobic capacity, that flexible as far as doing Olympic lifts and getting on their bars and stuff. I think it's pretty close. What do you think?
I'm going to put either a CrossFit or I throw out, I mean, it's a brand, but Spartan.
Okay, fair. That's
one
fair.
of the two there.
Yeah.
Yeah, because Spartan, I mean, those balls are 80, 100 pounds that you are lifting and carrying, and Spartan is definitely more endurance, which is a lot of what we're going to talk about today in endurance here. But you take a CrossFit athlete, and while they do have those acid burn events, I don't see a CrossFit athlete going out there and running 15 miles while doing all those events and still performing as well, where I think a Spartan athlete may have more balance at the time. But I think taking the top of both and having an event and putting them all together, that would be a lot of fun. I'd pay for that pay-per-view.
Yeah, that's almost like the we're in a shared universe now. I'm looking at a Rocky Balboa Apollo Creed poster, but that's almost like Rocky versus Hulk Hogan in Rocky 3, right?
Exactly.
Let's take the best boxer, the best wrestler, and see who wins in a match kind of thing.
Oh, absolutely. Before we get into some of your topics here on Finish Strong, strength and mobility for endurance athletes, you were talking about having the opportunity to work with Michael Vick a little bit. Now, I only bring him up because he is one of the elite athletes, just as a pure athlete, had amazing success in the league. Even at the end of his career, was able to find ways to be smarter and actually have the best year of his entire career when he was not that hotshot young rookie kid anymore. What is the difference between a super stud like that versus everybody else?
Okay. And I've been around a lot of men and women that would be in that category. I've been lucky in my life. The best way to put it is for the generation now that grew up playing video games, certain people got the cheat codes, right? they got the turbo button on life. They really do, right? Like everybody could run, not everybody, almost everybody could run 100 yards, right? Handful of people got the right genetics to do it in 9 seconds, right? And I think that's really what it is in most athletic endeavors. We're doing things. They're doing things. Anybody can throw a football. If you teach them for 2 minutes, you could theoretically get the motion down, right? But there's a handful of people on earth that can throw a football 60 yards on a dime, like the way, say, Peyton Manning can. And I think that's really the thing that is, I think as a strength coach, you got to try to justify in your head that so much of what we do is genetic and physically gifted people. And then the challenge becomes, how do we make people a little bit better? You know what I mean? So the example I always give to people is, if athletically a 0 is a person that can't walk 1 foot in front of the other without falling down on their face, right? And a 10 is LeBron James, Kobe Bryant, Michael Vick, that level of athlete. I really don't believe you could take a 3 and make them a 10, right? But I think you take a 3 and make them a 4 or 5. You can take an 8 and make them a 9, right? By the way we train, the way we eat, the way we sleep, the way we hydrate, the supplements we take, that kind of stuff. And what I always tell people is, don't discount that, because when you take a kid from a 3 to a 5, that might be playing high school sports or not, right? And we're talking about a 7 to an 8. You might be talking about getting a day job after college, or getting out, making generational wealth to play in one of these leagues and make a ton of money. Or if we're talking a 9 to a 10, it might be a cup of coffee in the majors, or it might be a 20-year career in the majors where your grandkids don't have to work. So I do think that a little incremental progress is important for everybody. And at the lower end of the spectrum, you do older adults, and that going from a 2 to a 3 might be the difference from having a great retirement where you're playing with your grandkids, food shopping for yourself, driving your car till older in life, to just being miserable those last couple of decades of your life. So I think you got to kind of fight tooth and nail for every increment you can improve on that, because either the results might be just, personal, like I made my high school team, they might be financial, or they might just be lifestyle. Your lifestyle might be much better if you can make a jump from a 2 to a 3 to a 4, maybe.
Before you're talking about how some parents want to train their kid like Aaron Judge, but they're not 6'6", and just these freaks of nature in a positive way as an athlete. It's often through extra hard work and dedication that you can take that extra step there. How much have you found, though, that about when people mature in their careers? I mean, some people, Little League, that people think this is the next Babe Ruth,
right?
But that's the best they ever get. Others don't develop until they're in college or even the minors, or even some barely scrape into the majors, and then they really take off.
I think it's huge. And I think it's one thing we don't fully understand exactly yet, that why I work with a lot of basketball players, and you get a kid that the end of his junior in high school might be 6'1". By the end of his senior, he's 6'7" or 6'8", right? So now you got some eyes on you because there's not too many people that are 6'8" in the whole world, right? But your body and your neurological system isn't used to working a 6'8" skeleton yet, right? So you might just barely get into like a Division II or a low Division I college, and by the time you're done with 2 or 3 years, you use a cliche, grow into your body, and now you got a shot at the NBA or playing overseas, whatever that next step might be. But I think that's a big thing. You have to realize that people mature at different levels. And the one mistake I see parents making is, I have a 5-year-old daughter. She plays soccer and does gymnastics, and she really likes it. The minute she doesn't really like it, we're done. She can do whatever else she wants. If I'm at a soccer game when she's 20 years old, cheering her on in the sidelines at Rutgers, great. If I'm at the Stone Pony watching her be in a punk band when she's 20, I'll be in the front row for that. That's the way I am, right? But if she's going to grow up and mature, she might not be the best 12-year-old, but she might be the best 17-year-old, depending on how her friends, how her age group matures, and how if she continues to get better, more coordinated, better conditioned, that kind of stuff. But to some extent, you do have to just kind of ride it out and see when you hit that growth spurt and when your body matures to be able to play at that hopefully next level.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think we have the exact same mentality mindset with the kids there. If they're not having fun with it, what are we doing? Why are we forcing them to do something that they're going to be resistant upon at that point? Yeah,
and I take it to the extent of, and I knew this going into her playing sports. When I go to as many practices as I can, every game that I can, and I never wear stuff from my job. I don't want to be asked about it. I don't want the coach being like, well, what should these kids do? They're 6. They should be having fun. That's what they should do. At some point, I'm sure somebody will Google me or Google her and find out what I do for a living. And my answer is I'm going to give them just a very generic, cookie cutter workout that is safe. I don't, until she gets older, we're going to just do the normal, have fun. It's a recreational activity, be in shape, develop an appreciation for being physically active. And that's positive. But we're not going to be breaking down game film when she's 7. That's just not going to be my family.
That would be a fun Friday night, pizza and game film.
Yeah.
So there's a difference here between perception of strength and reality of strength. Tell me about that a little bit.
Well, the biggest thing, again, you're kind of looking at this presentation I did a couple months ago at the New Jersey State NSCA clinic, and I appreciate you bringing that here, man. I really do, because I put some work into that. I think the biggest thing that I'm a kind of unique person in this field, and that my original introduction to the strength world was powerlifting, right, in high school. Then I got into Olympic lifting and competing in that, and did that through high school or college and graduate school. And then when I hit about 30, I got really into endurance events. I ran a couple marathons. I run the New Jersey Marathon 3 times. It is, for my money, the best event in New Jersey. It's the coolest day of the year. The years I don't run in it, I volunteer at it. I love it. It's a great thing to be a part of. And I think the strength world and the endurance world are so far apart, right? You got your people that take running seriously and marathon, half marathon, that world, and then you got your lifters over here, and they're not the same world. And I don't think that needs to be the case. I think to some extent the success I've seen in my own self, endurance wise, part of that is predicated on I had a good strength base from years of powerlifting and Olympic lifting, right? And as I got older, I just kind of liked running and was able to do that. And I think when you get, say high school cross country kids that decide they're going to be quote unquote runners and never lift, you can't be shocked when they're incredibly weak, incredibly imbalanced, incredibly inflexible by the time they're in college, and let alone as they get older. Right. So I think, and what I'm hoping to do with this book, which is coming out next year, is kind of sell that idea to the running community. Like you can you can be faster, you can have a longer career, you can feel better by getting stronger. An example, from high school cross country until adults I know in their 40s and 50s that are competing in marathons at a pretty high level, they get to the end of their training program or the end of their race, and they feel horrible. They're exhausted. They can't wait till it ends, right? In my opinion, if we're training, we should be getting better. We should be feeling better as we train, right? I want to finish a marathon sprinting, hugging my wife, taking pictures, feeling like $1 million. That's where I want to be after a marathon. I don't want to be dragging and crawling across the finish line. I want to feel like I need 10 days to recover and an ice bath. And now, obviously, it's a hard event. You're going to feel I'm exaggerating a little bit, right?
I get it.
But Do we have to feel physically, mentally, emotionally exhausted at the end of a cross-country season, at the end of a marathon season, or can we condition our body to feel good at the end of it and make it a good experience? And I want to be a part of making that a good experience for people.
A lot of runners seem to be scared of lifting weights. I remember ran cross-country in high school, and I went into the weight room and decided, let me start lifting some weights after cross-country practice. And I was the only one. Everyone kept saying, you're going to be too big, you're going to be too strong, you're going to get slower from it. What's up with that?
It's a fair thing, man. I hear it all the time. There's three things I always say about it. Number one, if you're going to, I think that there was the idea of getting slow is basically becoming inflexible, right? Mm-hmm. Now, I think guys like us know that with the right stretching, right dynamic warm-ups, right foam rolling, right recovery techniques, we can be stronger and not get less flexible. Right. We know that if we do it properly. Now you got to put time into getting stronger and time into maintaining or improving flexibility, but it can be done if you're committed. Agreed?
Agreed.
The other thing we see is the argument of I don't want to get too big. And my argument is how many people on earth are quote unquote too big? Mm-hmm. Look at bodybuilders, right? Their life is lifting weights, right? Their nutrition, their sleep patterns, their supplements, in some cases, their steroid use. Everything in their life is based on being that big and strong. Are you going to commit to that the way a bodybuilder does? No, you're going to lift weights a couple days a week, throw some dumbbells around, swing some kettlebells. Okay, so you're probably not going to look like Schwarzenegger after a couple months in the gym. So if we look at that logically, we can push that to the side and realize it's not a real argument, right?
I'm agreeing.
And the other thing I'm going to say, the third thing I say, and this is on me up until I was in my 30s, strength coaches at high schools and colleges and even some personal training facilities don't want to deal with distance people, right? They think like, oh, you're weak, you're not strong, you're inflexible, you don't know how to lift, so I don't want to show you how to lift at the college level. Why are you tracking all the mud and grass from the trail run into the weight room to have to clean up later? You know what I mean? It's almost like a hostile environment. And my thing's like, why? Like, if you only want to work with the people that know how to lift weights, what are you doing this job for? Like in my job at Seton Hall, the best team we have in the weight room is by far baseball. Okay. Mm-hmm. And I say this to their faces. I say it to anyone who listen. They're good in the weight room because they are like me when I was their age, which is a Jersey Shore Guido meathead. Okay. That's me. I could avoid it, but that's what I am. And that's what they are. And I love those guys, but it's like, if that's all you want to work with, you're in the wrong profession because those people kind of know what they're doing already to some extent. Right. Mm-hmm. So part of your job is to lasso in and sell your services to some extent to other people that don't get it yet. And that's to some extent where I see better satisfaction is the kids that come in knowing nothing and you can help them and teach them a lot more because you took them a lot further on that journey.
So there's a picture in here. You bring that up, the baseball team. There's a trail on
the rock.
There you go. The rock. Here's the picture comes up. What is the rock?
Okay. Here's the deal. And this is any strength and conditioning coach, any personal trainer is gonna wince when I explain to you what we do at Seton Hall Baseball. It's 1 day a year, and I'll explain why we do it. We are up in South Orange, New Jersey. If you run outside of our gate, it's a super elevation up to a hill in South Mountain Reservation. There's a big rock that is an actual physical rock that you can look out and see New York City, and it's a Vietnam War memorial for veterans. Okay. 40 plus years ago, the coach at the time, his son is the current coach. The Shepard family are like legends in New Jersey baseball. Mm-hmm. And Rob Shepard, the coach now, is probably one of my best friends at Steon Hall. So shout out to him. We just run out of the gate. It's 4 miles uphill to the top of this rock. We look out at talk about veterans, stuff like that, and we run back down to campus. We do it at the end of the fall semester around Thanksgiving. It is the furthest thing you would want to do physiologically for a baseball player, right? An 8 mile slow hour plus run. And then we get home and we have a pizza party on campus. Okay. It is not, there's nothing in that for a baseball player, right?
Not one bit.
But when I got there, I was dead set against it. I learned two things right away. One, we've been doing this for 40 years. Sit down, shut up, and be a part of the team, which is, you got to do that sometimes when you work in a college setting. And number two, it's such a big deal to the guys and the coaches, and everybody runs it. The coaches, everybody's in, right? So it's kind of like a day of all hands on deck. We're going to do this thing that we all acknowledge is terrible. And then we're going to go home for Thanksgiving, have a good time with our families, and get ready for finals. As far as team building and camaraderie, it's really valuable to the program. So it's this thing that I wanted no part of my first year there. And in year 15, I look forward to it all year. It's also for college, high school strength coaches out there. It's one of the few things I could do with these guys who are big, strong, 20-year-old super athletes and actually compete with them. You know what I mean? Like, if we're getting in the squat rack, I'm going to probably get embarrassed. If we're getting in the batting cage, I'm definitely getting embarrassed. If we go run the rock, I could be in the top 4 or 5 guys. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. I mean, it says a lot for the coach and the entire community to actually be a part of that and team building. And if a coach gets involved, the team's going to get around it. I remember down at USF, Coach Levitt would be doing he'd be doing suicide sprints out on the football field with the football team. Now, he's not going to be winning, but he's pushing those guys. I'm an old man, and I'm doing this. You guys better.
What I do, and this is a little tip to the young coaches. I oddly explained this to my wife yesterday for some reason. It's real hard to work with a big group and do the workout with them. Just the way it doesn't really work, right? So if I'm with a group of 40 guys, 40 baseball guys, 25 softball players, whatever it is, I got to be an administrator. I got to make sure it's going. Kids are doing things right. My interns are working the way they should be working, and it's working, right? But if there's a kid that's got a class conflict and has to make it up later in the day, or somebody's injured the first week we do it, I always do that with 1 or 2 kids, right? Mm-hmm. Just to show them I could do it. Just show them I'm not asking you to do something I wouldn't do myself.
Right.
Now, I'm 43 years old. I'm not as fast as our fastest athletes. I'm not as strong as our strongest athletes, but they're not going to see me back down. You know what I mean?
Of course.
And I think that and then what happens is they go back and tell the other players, oh, Angelo did the whole thing with me, or Angelo did, and it is valuable, because I think the one thing that happens in sport coaching a lot, from youth sports all the way up to professional, someone's yelling at you to work harder, try harder, have more heart, put more effort in, and their belly's hanging over their belt and they're eating Cheetos while they're telling you to do it. How much credibility does that person really have? Nah. I think you got to build that credibility. And I mean, I understand that some parts of life are definitely do what I say, not what I do. Mm-hmm. But I think if you really want that buy-in, you got to at least show you're willing to try to walk the walk.
Oh, absolutely. I remember it was the first time, it was my first week. And we were on the platform doing some Olympic lifts. And one of the guys, he's a freak of nature, just doing reverse curls. So I kept showing him until he got so frustrated. Said, F you, coach, you do it. So I did it right. Okay, respect.
But it's oddly enough, man, I have a podcast doing. I was talking to some Olympic lifters this week, and they asked how much Olympic lifting do I do now that my personal focus are more on endurance events for the last 10 years. Mm-hmm. And the answer is I do some kind of Olympic lifts every week because I want to be able to demonstrate it. Right. I don't need to power clean a house anymore, but I got to put some plates on the side and be able to explain it in case somebody needs to know how to do it. So I try to stay at least that strong and at least that good technically, so I can explain it to a group of people and not embarrass myself and get winded while I'm trying to talk. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. When you get into differences though between endurance athletes and just strength athletes, what would you say some true differences are just in the mentality themselves?
I think the mentality is a little different. I think the hardest thing is when strength athletes, or if we're talking Olympic lifters, shot putters, those kind of people, they might be quote unquote in the gym or at practice for 3 hours, but only have a couple of max effort attempts, right?
Right.
Whereas a cross country person might be on a run for an hour and a half and be running that whole hour and a half, right? It's a little bit different social experience because you're not having those time between sets to rest and talk about things and look at technique. I find the kids that are good at strength sports, or you're good Olympic lifters, you're good field guys on track and field, you're good strongmen that I've been around, are very, very smart and cerebral and can look at a video of them doing something and make small changes pretty easily. Mm-hmm. The good ones, the ones that can actually internalize technique correction and do it right. I feel like a lot of runners, and I fall in this myself, so I'm not throwing anybody on the bus, get into, I just got to get X amount of miles in this week, no matter how we do them, whether quality or junk, I got to get them in. And the technique and any tightness I feel, any pain will work itself out as I get through this 10-mile run, whatever it is. And I think that's something where the profession is kind of moving away from that and saying, like, let's look at biomechanics. Let's look at the way you move. Let's look at these movement patterns, because if you're if your hip flexors are in drastic pain every time you run 5 miles, what can we do? Are they tight? Are they hypermobile? Are they whatever the situation? Mm-hmm. Usually they're tight, but whatever it is, how do we correct that and make this experience better? And I think that from someone who has spent a lot of time around what we'll call high level athletes, what I see it's different in their game, because even at college, it's definitely a job. You have to do what you're told to do to keep your scholarship or get paid if you're a professional. But the biggest thing I see is with the general population people, which is what I kind of more interested in now, they don't like training because of two things. One, they've never found the modality that they like, right? Mm-hmm. So if you say, I don't like running. Okay, there's a million other ways to do cardio than run. Do anything, right? And other things, they feel some kind of pain or discomfort, so they think they can't do anything, right?
Right.
So for example, if running is beating up your Achilles tendons, can we swim? Can we do, there's 10, 12, whatever, a dozen other things we can do that might be comfortable and you might like. And I think that some people have such a narrow view of fitness and activity. They think because X causes discomfort, Y is going to cause discomfort. And I don't think that's the case. And in the world we live in now with, there's a specialized machine that you guys have over with Functionised, right? There's so much out there that we can use. I feel like unless you're really in a body cast, there's really no reason not to do some kind of physical activity at least every couple of days, right?
Of course. I mean, if that was the case, then the quarterback would never ever be able to do anything after game day. If they got one arm that works, you can work that one arm.
Yeah, exactly. And the thing is, too, there's a lot of, this is where the internet is good. You can go find other things you like to do. You know what I mean? Or they say, for example, you're tired of, like, you run marathons for 10 years. At the end of 10 years, you can't stand the idea of doing that anymore. There's rowing, there's CrossFit, there's a million other things you could do. There's places like Functionized that are way more specialized that will hopefully keep you active and mentally engaged in what you're trying to accomplish.
Absolutely. Love that pop, by the way.
No problem. I'm a pro.
When it comes to distance endurance runners, endurance athletes of any type, there's a couple fold. One, I've personally learned that longevity may be reduced simply because of the chronic state of inflammation. Plus, they're getting injured a lot, especially as they continue to go through that. How do you keep them more in an optimal zone where they can continue to get better and not get hurt or undertrained?
It's an uphill battle. And this is even, as there's a slide in this presentation you were cool enough to pull out for us today, where in 2011, I ran the New Jersey Marathon for the first time. And I am by no means a world-class marathon. I'm going to use myself as an example, right? I ran for the New Jersey Marathon in 2011, first ever full marathon. I ran, I think, just under 500 miles in 4 months to get ready for that training, right? To get ready for that race. And my time was like 3:45, something like that, right?
Okay.
5 years later, I did it again. And this time, my life's a little different. I have a child. My world's different 5 years later than it was in 2011. And for a bunch of reasons, I ran close to 100 less total miles getting ready for this race. Okay. Weather was a factor. A bunch of things happened. I got 20 minutes faster or whatever by running less, right? And that really opened my eyes to the idea of, and I should have known this way before that as a lifetime strength and conditioning coach, that more isn't always better, right? Recovery is important, and having time between your runs is important. And the biggest thing that you got to get across to, and I think it starts young. I think these kids from the first time they start seeing the Nike and Gatorade commercials that are shoved down our throats, sporting events, it's always more. How do you do more? How do you get more out of yourself? Sometimes you get more out of yourself by taking a nap, right? So we hate video games, but there's some days where playing Xbox is a better option than running 10 miles, depending on what's going on inside your body internally, right? And I think, and then their coaches were raised in that world, and that starts young in their youth and high school coaches, and their college coaches buy into it, and then they spend their whole life thinking, I have to always do more, or if I'm not working, somebody else is. And that's not, and then a lot of time in the distance sports, you combine that with not the best nutrition, right? They have higher incidence of eating disorder than any other athletes. I believe that stat still holds true. And then with young kids, you don't just eat horribly, right? So running 100 miles a week is tough, but if you're doing that on very low calories, very bad calories, then you throw in drinking and partying on the weekends. Hopefully it's on the weekends, not the weeknights. You need to get help if that's the case. But, so you got kids waking up and running 7 miles before school and they slept 2 hours the night before. How long are you doing that before your body waves a white flag and you're finished? And then one thing that I've seen, the people that stay in the endurance sport longer get that earlier on. Right. They understand it and they can keep their body healthier longer. And the other example I think you see in the sports we all watch on TV, the popular sports, think about the NBA, the guys that come into everybody in the NBA is a physical freak. We go ahead and acknowledge that, right? But the guys that that take care of their body, sleep, usually they have families. They're not the guys you see on Deadspin.com in the club till 4 a.m, right? They're not living that life. I understand that lifestyle is probably a lot of fun and it's really hard to say no to. I understand that, right? But most of those party guys aren't in the league past 30, right?
You're absolutely right.
You got the guys that come in and talk or just live that lifestyle of, I'm like LeBron, I'm sleeping 12 hours a night. I'm doing these things to make my body better. He's 35, 40 years old or whatever, is now playing maybe better than he did when he was 22. And the argument of that is if your goal is to make as much money as you can in professional sports, part of that's playing as long as you can. Right. And I think you see that in the guys we know, the guys that take care of their bodies tend to hang around a lot longer and have better careers than the guys that don't.
I'm sure we've all known guys that they're in and out of the league so fast just because they love that nightlife.
Yeah. And I come at it from, man, I understand how hard that can be. Right.
Oh, yeah,
but what I even tell kids in college, I'm not the guy to stand there and beat my chest, tell you never go out, never drink alcohol, never have fun. But I think the one thing about sports is you can time that to go along with your training a little bit, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like if you got a big run on Saturday, take it easy on Friday night, right? Or feel like the NBA or the NHL in a bubble right now, can you not go to a strip club until the season's over, which is only a couple months away, which one of the guys couldn't do, right? You already got caught out there in Magic City. But one thing about sports, which is different than, let's say, working 9 to 5 life, it's not, yes, taking care of your body is a 12-month commitment, but the season's not 12 months a year. So, if you're a basketball guy, you got the summer. If you're a baseball player, you got the winter. There's times of the year you can get that party and that fun stuff in, but still take care of your body.
Agreed. There's a big difference between fascia and muscle, and especially when it comes to caring for your body, movement patterns. A lot of people still are on muscle, not realizing that in some other worlds that fascia is actually being considered another organ in of itself. What exactly is fascia, and how does it affect our bodies?
I think to make it easy for everybody, if you ignore fascia in your body, it's almost like a dentist ignoring your gums and only taking care of your teeth. Right? If the gums holding the teeth together are gonna go, the teeth are useless to some extent, right? So the fascia, I think, is a good way to put it. It's what holds our muscles together and allows them to work optimally and allows us to move in a good, efficient way. And a lot of people, either whether it's congenital or just the way they've trained, the way they move throughout their life, by the time they're 20 years old, a lot of that's in a bad position, right? So I think a lot of, and I'm assuming a lot of what you guys do is correcting that and being able to meet with people individually, do movement assessments, and realize we have to attack that in a way that's going to allow us to move properly.
Right.
But I think if you don't address that at all, it becomes real hard to do anything well.
So there's a difference between just bending and touching your toes and changing movement patterns.
Yeah, it's a weird thing with all the information out there about what guys like us do, right?
Mm-hmm.
That idea of bending over and touching your toes is still kind of like the gold standard for quote unquote flexibility, right? And is it a valuable test? Maybe. Is it the only test or evaluation we should ever do on someone's movement? Absolutely not. Mm-hmm. But I feel like we're in a weird place where it's like people still think that's a thing. And I'm not saying it doesn't need to be part of a movement assessment, but it can't be the entire movement assessment.
Of course not. I was reading years and years ago, geez, I'm going to make myself sound really old here, about dynamic flexibility and fascial manipulation and just opening up joints, if you would, before competition, practice, things of that nature. Yet I find you go to a little league field and kids are still before practice just touching the toes, pulling their foot behind their back, arm across the body, just doing this long, slow CNS cool down. How would you get parents to stop that and kind of start the kids off from a young age so they start doing things more advanced and elite in that case?
I don't know. I don't know, because I feel like I've said everything I could say about it. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. I'd like to think, I'm an adjunct professor role, so I like to think the kids I have in the classroom or in the weight room when they grow up and have kids are better about it, but I know they're not. I know they're not. You know what I mean? And I always look at it as I deal with some parents that take their own training pretty seriously. I'm sure you deal with a lot too, right? They do all the dynamic warm-up stuff. They foam roll. They're into it, right? Mm-hmm. But then when their kid goes to Little League, the kid doesn't do any of it. Nope. It's such a weird thing. I mean, I think a lot of people think they're a kid, they don't need to do that, right? And my attitude is, well, how much better did you feel about your body when you started doing that stuff and taking care of it properly? Maybe you're 35 when you started some kind of personal trainer. Oh, I felt better. Okay, why not give that to your son or daughter when they're 15 or 10, and just start earlier, and they'll be in a better spot than you were when you were 30. And I think it's really an uphill battle, and I don't know how to address it, but I think you got to kind of sell it as it works. It makes people feel better. It will keep people off the injured reserve list, for lack of a better term, and it will hopefully make kids have a better experience playing sports and being physically active and stay out of the training room and on the field or the court or the pool or whatever it is, and stick with it longer.
It sounds very similar also when it comes to nutrition. I mean, a parent will have some sauteed kale and some olive oil and free-range lamb, and then the kid will have pizza with ice cream for dinner.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, why don't you just give the kid the same thing you're eating?
Right.
And they'll learn and maybe appreciate it long term.
Yeah, man, that nutrition aspect with everybody is hard. I think I think that like the junk food industry does such a good job of marketing their products, and at this stage in the game, they've just perfected their formulas and recipes so good that you almost can't turn away. You almost can't not like it at this point. And like I always tell people, like I'm not a big soda guy, but if I didn't care about my health at all, I would drink like 3 Snapples a day. Like that would be but like I realize you got to intellectualize that and make it like 3 a month. There's no,
Right.
I'm not telling you should never drink a Snapple, never go to McDonald's, never eat pizza, but there's got to be some balance in that, even from a young age. You're just, and the stats show you, we're seeing way too many people that are not finding any balance in that whatsoever. And the joke I keep making is, when are they going to stop making my 600-pound life? When are we going to run out of 600-pound people? They just keep coming out with season after season. It's like Jersey Shore. It never ends. It's like, there's more 600-pound people here. What are we doing? But that's where we're going. Unfortunately, it's not a good feeling as to be a part of that in America right now.
If somebody is an endurance athlete, how would you transition them into incorporating some type of resistance training? Okay, so
one thing I don't want to keep plugging the book, but I will.
I was going to plug the book in a second.
Appreciate
real quick,
that. So one thing me and my co-author RJ Borgers did, we broke the year down into 4 phases, right?
Mhm.
So you got your off season, which is when you just ran your big events of the year. There's nothing on the horizon for the next couple of months, right? Then you got your building a base period where you start building that mileage back up. Then you have your peak mileage period when you're really just crushing miles, getting ready for a big triathlon, marathon, or B. And then you got your taper period where you start to let your body heal up, keep your cardiovascular system up, high functioning, and not keep, let your body heal and get ready for that race day. I think what you got to do is find people, explain to people, we're going to find and identify a part of the year that you're off season, right? So we're not going to be short a race. We're not going to ask you to run 15 miles and then come in the squat rack and crush front squats. We're going to find the time of the year when your endurance training is reduced, whatever that means for you. Okay. Now I'm going to explain to you, we're going to do some things and you're going to wake up sore if we're doing this right. Now we're going to do everything we can to make you feel good. We're going to dynamic warm up. We're going to foam roll. We're going to do ice baths if you have access to it, whatever it might be. But we're going to introduce some new training stimuluses that are going to beat your body up a little bit. Just being honest, the first couple times you do it. Once your body gets used to that, hopefully by the time you get to that period of the year where you got to really start ramping up your mileage and your endurance training, your body's kind of used to that muscular strength training, and it doesn't affect those workouts as poorly. But I think you got to identify that off season and introduce stuff slowly. Then I think the biggest mistake we see with high school and college cross country teams is they go from doing very little in spring, right? Most of the kids are not your spring athletes if it's high school, and they're definitely not in college. Then in the summer, they might run on their own, but they're probably not lifting. And then first day of cross country practice, we're going to run 10 miles and we're going to lift. Well, what do you expect that kid to feel like the next day?
Well, he's already hurt in the first place.
Right.
Yeah.
So my thing is, in an ideal world, we introduce the lifting over the summer on that calendar, right? Little by little, maybe 1 day a week, the first couple of weeks, 2 days a week, the next day while you're barely doing any mileage on the road. And then when you get to that first day of cross country practice, you're ready for that first race, that workout, that lifting and running together doesn't just lay you out for 3 days. And that's the biggest thing. Identify time of the year when your endurance training isn't that important. Introduce new stuff during that off season.
Now, when it comes to the running season, whether cross country, we'll use as an example here. I mean, there's a race every single week. Do you keep lifting constant? Do you increase? Do you decrease? What do you do and why? I
think my attitude with I think that holds true for cross country season and in swimming season for most distance swimmers. If we're going to compete every week, we're going to try to do our lifting early in the week. So we're going to compete every Saturday, say Monday, Wednesday, maybe Tuesday, Wednesday, and probably give them Thursday, Friday to recover and get ready for those Saturday races, right?
Right.
And my attitude is the early part of the season, if the races aren't going to be that quote unquote important to the season, we're going to train right through that, right? So we're going to hit the same volume, same intensity we did over the summer and try to get our body adapted to that. And then as we get towards the championship season, that kind of end of the fall where the races become a little more important, competition gets a little bit tougher, we'll taper the workouts to where we're going to do, say, for example, we did 2 total body days, 8 exercises each day, 3 sets of each. I still want to hit the same movements, but we're going to decrease our volume and intensity. And that's we might do 2 sets of push-ups instead of 3. We might do one set of delt raises for the shoulder and the rotator cuff as opposed to 3. But keep doing those movements because that's kind of what made their body feel good. One thing I do, and this is more in the swimming world than the cross country world, we started a quote unquote taper and we just stopped lifting a month before conference championships. And it's like, well, that's not a taper. That's a complete stoppage of what we were doing that made us successful. So luckily the swim coach at Seton Hall last quarter has been a young guy named Derek Sapp. He's been great to work with. And we kind of just look at the program and we're like, my attitude is this: if we're going to do a taper, if we cut our mileage down by 20%, let's cut our lifting down by 20%, right? So if we went from running 10, say for example, 10 miles a week, and now we're going to drop down to 8 for our taper, let's take whatever we're doing in the weight room and do 80% of that, and just kind of taper the whole thing. And hopefully the kid shows up ready to roll on race day or championship day or whatever it might be.
Do you do any explosive movements when it comes to with endurance athletes, swimmers, runners, or is it mostly dumbbells, bands, body weight?
We'll use some barbells, but for not really the traditionally explosive stuff, not in the Olympic lifts or modified Olympic lifts. And I think you could possibly introduce that stuff if you had enough time to teach it properly. The two things I would say when you're dealing with endurance athletes in a weight room setting, you're always up against 2 brick walls, right?
Right.
One is time. They're running, cycling, swimming for hours a day, right? So no matter how old they are, they only have 24 hours in a day. So you got to be as efficient as you can, so it doesn't matter to most of them, right? And then you're always dealing with fatigue. There's some of the few athletes you deal with that when they tell you they're tired and feel beat up, they're probably not lying, right? They're probably being serious with you. And you got to find a way to train around those 2 things. And if you can do that, you'll probably be successful at it. But and you got to base it on your group and your clientele and your demographic. But you're always dealing with that time constraint and that fatigue constraint.
Is there a difference if somebody who is more, we'll call it seasoned to be nice, or cultured, as Shantae, my wife, and I like to call it, versus somebody that's coming up to high school or in high school, and how you approach incorporating strength training when it comes to being an endurance athlete?
I'm going to be honest. I don't think so, because I think with endurance athletes, you're looking at in most cases, a sweeping generalization, such a low level of training knowledge across the board. You're starting at square one, right? I think if you deal with a lot of endurance people, not everybody, but some of them, if we're talking push-ups, TRX rows, some very light shoulder stabilization stuff up top, body weight squats, body weight lunges, that kind of stuff. That might be all the 14-year-old freshman high school needs, and it might be all the 25-year-old out of college person needs to start, right? And then you got to see where their body is and how long it's going to take to advance. And the weird thing about this, I think strength coaches will agree with me, a lot of times you can deal with that younger, less seasoned, less trained person, they can actually advance faster because they don't have the imbalances and the inflexibilities and the pre-existing injuries the older person might have.
Aren't they lucky?
Yeah, it'd be great. When do you want to be 14 again?
When it comes to supplementation, what are some common? I mean, I know, before we were talking about how everyone can be very different, especially if we get lab work and all that kind of stuff into it. But just as a general overview for endurance athletes, what might you typically recommend?
I'll be honest, and this is a very simple, way simpler than what you guys want to talk on this podcast approach I take to it with college kids. There's only college kids. I tell people, college kids, I do a lecture every semester on nutrition with my classes, and the only thing on the slide is an apple and a Twinkie, right? And I go, which one should you eat? Everybody says the apple. I'm like, all right, we know nutrition. Let's go home. And then they get down and go, we can't really leave yet. But I do think it's to some extent that easier. We kind of know what's good for us. Eat good food most of the time. Drink plenty of water. Get plenty of sleep. If you're doing that and you're still not able to progress for whatever reason, now's the time to sit and maybe refer to a nutritionist, get lab work done, get blood work done, see what's lacking for whatever reason. I think at the college level and probably the high school level, the nutrition is just so bad. If you could just correct 1 or 2 meals a day to not be terrible, you're making an improvement, right? So if I can be like, all right, you eat Pop-Tarts every day, what about so anything better than a Pop-Tart just for breakfast, right?
Anything.
Yeah, and literally any other food than what you're eating now will probably be an improvement.
Right.
And just kind of make those very basic nutrition goals, I think is good. But as far as supplementation, I think I kind of know my limitations on that, and I'm happy to refer other people to take care of that.
If somebody, and I'm going to kind of go off topic, but not really too off topic here. When you think about being a guy in high school, you want to be big, strong, and shredded, but at the same time, you're on the cross country team and you want to win. How does someone achieve that balance where they can still have that? It sounds terrible. No one else around New Jersey can get it. That New Jersey beach body.
It's fair. Yeah, I love it, man. I love it. I wish I had one.
And still be able to do a sub-6 minute mile.
Here, this is again, I'm going to give you an off-topic answer that I think is basically what you're asking. And this is something I wish somebody told me when I was 12, as opposed to me figuring out when I was probably 32 years old. Be you, but be the best you can be. Right. I guess people are watching us now, but we're going to listen to this. I'm 5'5". I'm bald. I'm a 43-year-old strictly hip hop head that still like buys sneakers the day they come out. But like that's me. I could fight that. I could try to be like other people, but at the end of the day, that's been me for 30 years now, right? And I've spent a lot of my life trying to be another kind of guy. But if you're the guy that runs a sub-6 and you have a thin build and your sneakers are always dirty because you keep running through the mud and you can't figure out how to keep them clean, just be that guy. We can't all be the situation in Ronnie on the Jersey Shore. Then the truth be told, they can't do what you're doing.
Right.
So I think that's one thing I try to get through to my daughter and the kids I deal with. You can be the best you can be. You can't be somebody else. Right. And you got to maximize yourself every way you can, but don't, because if you, my attitude is always, if you attain something by pretending to be something you're not, you're going to be as miserable if you didn't attain it. So just be you and find people that you like and find your people. And that'll be, for example, when I was in high school, my friends were the weight room kids. We're still friends 25 years later because that's my crew.
Right.
You know?
Profound. Tell me a little bit about your book here. When's it coming out?
We were supposed to, it's coming out on Bloomsbury Publishing. They're over in England. I haven't, weirdly enough, man, do you have books out? You do, right? So just a real quick publishing story for people that might be interested, because I like telling this. At the end of 2017, I had an idea for a children's fitness book that I thought was the best idea ever.
Okay.
I pitched it to 5 traditional publishers a week, every week of 2018. And long story short, nobody thought it was a good idea at all. A couple of people had some interest. It just didn't, I couldn't make it work. Right. And I realized in the world we live in now, self-publishing and various ways you can do that there's a lot of pluses to that, but I want to try my hand at the traditional publishing world first, kind of establish a name, and then maybe go the indie route after that. Right. So that was all of 2018. At the end of the summer of 2018, I got this idea of like, well, I lift weights and I do endurance events, and there's not a lot of information out there on that. And so I just did the typical thing. Went on Amazon, went on Google. There's no books on that. It just doesn't exist. There's a couple websites, a couple IG accounts, but there's not a lot of information. So there's a professor at Seton Hall in our athletic training department named Richard Borgers. Me and him have been friends for about 10 years. We run together a lot. We lift together. We're just friends. And he does a lot of research, right? There's a lot of published research every year. So he's good on the research and writing end. I realize that I'm pretty good on the kind of like every man writing, relating to people kind of thing. Not that he's not, but that's kind of more my wheelhouse. And I have my own personal experience to build from. So I'm like, hey man, do you want to write something together? I'll do the proposal. I'll take care of all the work. If we get a deal, we just got to figure who's writing what chapters, right? Fair. So early 2019, I had the same idea. Every week, 5 publishers. First 5 publishers I sent it out to, I got interest from the first 3, right? So those first, I always tell people, I got turned down for a year, but I didn't get turned down. My idea got turned down, right? Second idea, I came out, I had a bidding war, and then we're not talking huge sums of money by any means, but I had 3 publishers interested, right? So then we went, and that was it. That was the end of my pitch period. I just had to make a decision. Me and RJ sat down. We made some phone calls with people. We went with Bloomsbury. And it's been a good experience. The situation we're in now, though, it should have been out in September, but because of the pandemic and the coronavirus, it's going to be spring of 2021. Okay. So we're about but it is. I always tell people, if you want to write a book, you should do it. It's a great way to get your ideas out there. Great way to raise your profile. It's to some extent probably put me on this podcast today, which I'm thankful for. But it's a long game. It was from August of 2019, and we're gonna not have a physical copy in our hands, and hopefully in your hands at home, until the spring of 2021. So it's a 2.5-year process to get a book that we probably wrote it in 3 months, but the game is just long. Right. When it finally does come out, how are individuals able to obtain it in their hands? Sure, it's going to be in bookstores. So we're going to have, if hopefully Barnes and Noble is still around in 2021. Who knows what world we're going with the way the world's going. But And that honestly, man, I like people to buy it in person, but I'm kind of selfishly excited to see something I wrote in a bookstore. That's kind of exciting, right?
Absolutely.
It'll be on Amazon, obviously it'll be on Bloomsbury website. And I have a bunch of relationships with running stores throughout the Northeast. So I'm going to try to get it in there. Places like Runner's High and Freehold or Cape May Running Company down in Cape May. I just try to make it available there, hopefully at the front desk and do that. Because one thing, if you're any aspiring authors listening, the promotion of the book is really on your shoulders, right? So I would say be prepared for that and hit the ground running. Like I started the Instagram account a year before we were going to have the book posted. I believe that's how we met actually. But just try to build an online following, build a fan base. And when my goal is however many books Bloomsbury publishes, I want people knocking down the door for the next publication as soon as possible. So I'm trying to hit the ground running, sell as many as I can off top and hopefully be a part of this publishing game for the next, the rest of my life, hopefully.
Aspirations. Now, Angelo, if people want to get in touch with you right now, ask you questions, just say hi, get your autograph, how would they do so?
The best way to do it is email. It's angelo.gingerelli@gmail.com. That's the best way to handle stuff like this for now. And on Instagram, we got really lucky that we're able to get this handle. It's finish_strong_book. And you can either DM me on that or just follow for information about when the book's coming out, training plans. I've been putting for the summer, I've been putting my what I've been doing physically up on the Instagram every couple of days. Hopefully showing you some good Jersey Shore scenery. You can run to the beach a lot and do some stuff like that. Beautiful. So give you some ideas of where to run if you're in New Jersey.
Best beaches in the world.
We do live in a great place, man. As much as the whole world wants to make fun of us, I dare anybody that uses New Jersey as a punchline to come to, Long Branch or Asbury Park or Seaside Heights in July and tell me it's not the greatest place in the world.
It's very New Jersey. I dare you, world.
Yeah, let's go.
You say something bad about us.
I love New Jersey. I love New Jersey so much. I'll fight you for it.
Angelo, it's been an absolute pleasure. I appreciate you being here from bottom of my heart. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Thank you. This has been great, man. Let's keep in touch.
Absolutely. As your mad scientist, I am out.